Hello, Alex here, and today we're going to talk about my first roll of Rollei's Paul and Reinhold films, which I shot in the 35mm format in the Canon EOS 1V over the summer. Let's get into it. Rollei Paul and Reinhold is the name for a 2-pack of identical black and white negative films which are sold in this cute little case that holds any two 35mm cartridges. This product was introduced in 2020 by Mako Direct to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the foundation of the Rollei company. According to the marketing blurb, the idea is that because both films are separate, it's indicative of the way that Paul and Reinhold had an identical shared vision when they founded the company. The film is only available in the 35mm format and only in this 2-pack. The film has a nominal ISO rating of 640. However, it does say in the marketing blurb and the official development information that you can shoot it anywhere from 320 to 1600 without any issues. This is a negative film designed for development in the standard black and white process, and I'm going to put the list of officially recommended developer and dilution combinations on screen now. So there's a good range to choose from, however I didn't have any of these, so that's not what I used, but I'll get into that in a bit. As this is a negative film, you're going to have to invert your negatives either during the scanning or printing process to yield your final positive images. Each canister contains 36 exposures, however they are not DX coded, so communication of this and the ISO to your camera electronically is not supported. So as I mentioned, I shot my first roll of this film in the Canon EOS 1V. I used both the 24 to 70mm f2.8, the Mark I, and the EF 300mm f2.8L IS you see up there in the corner. I shot this just before and during Ireland's mythical 2 weeks of summer, so we have a wide range of lighting conditions, from a bit of indoors, overcast lighting, and blistering bright light when I was doing some bird photography. So we've got a wide range of conditions to talk about, and I only note this because usually I shoot a film under identical sets of conditions, usually blowing through the whole roll in one day. So it's good in this sense that we can glean a bit more information about the film from this set of images. I shot the roll of film at ISO 640, however I'm not sure about the development because I didn't write it down because I'm an idiot. You would think as a chemist I would keep good notes, but unfortunately this is one of 3 rolls ever, and thankfully the only one in 2021 where I didn't write down my development conditions. However, I do know that I developed it in Rollei, and it wasn't stand development, so it was probably 1 + 25, probably in the region of 8 to 12 minutes, something like that. Why Rollei? Well, the film is said to have high sharpness and good grain and contrast, and that's the kind of thing that Rollei works well with, generally, so why not? As with all of my black and white negative film, I scanned it on the Canon EOS 1DX Mark III with the 100mm f2.8 LIS USM macro lens and inverted the curves manually in Lightroom. Firstly, I know I say this about a lot of films, but it does render a lot of fine detail, and that's particularly notable here because we're talking about such a high ISO film. I mean, 640, that's well beyond what would have been considered an ultra high speed film a few decades ago. So that's pretty impressive that it's able to get such fine, sharp detail in your shots. Partly this is going to be helped by the fact that I did develop in Rollei. I mean, if you use other developers, solvent developers, you will see a difference in fine detail, but I don't think it would be significant. I think that this is showing more detail than something like HB5 pushed to 800, also in Rollei. So I think that's a bit of a strength of the film itself, rather than the characteristics of the development. Secondly, the fact that it comes in the 2-pack with the little case is quite nice. Based on local pricing within the EU, I mean, compared to other 400-ish speed films, you're basically getting the case for free. So that's pretty cool. And you could always just shoot it at 400 if you weren't too concerned about that. It's nice in that regard. The case is extremely handy. I've used it for transporting batteries more than anything, small little bits and pieces, because I have bigger cases for film. I usually carry more than 2 rolls of 35mm with me, just in case. But it's still really nice that you're getting 2 rolls of film and the case for a pretty mild price. I think I paid 13 euros, you know, say 6.50 per roll plus the case. It's not a bad price. Thirdly, while it is quite a high contrast film, your contrast is more in the lower mids than in the blacks. So you're not getting just crushed information at the bottom of your histogram. It's more that the shadows taper off very quickly and then they level off with the blacks. So whereas with some films like XX, you're pretty much just killing everything below a certain point in your histogram. It just goes to pure black very, very quickly. This is more subtle in that your mids and low mids taper down, as I said, but there's still information there to actually work with. And that gives a high contrast look while retaining a lot of detail. So yeah, you know, it's high contrast, but the detail is still there. It's not just thrown away in the development process, and that's good. Firstly, it's pretty grainy. I would say it's grainier than HP5 pushed all the way to 1600, or at least very similar. I'll throw up 2 pictures here. The one on the left is taken with Rollei Paul. The one on the right is taken with HP5 at 1600 with a yellow filter, stand developed in Rodinal. And the contrast is pretty similar, but that's more just my post-processing with the HP5. But you can see the grain isn't that much more on the HP5 side. I don't have any negatives of HP5 at 800 handy, but you can see that's pretty similar here. I mean, there is more grain in the HP5 at 1600. I mean, if you think about it, it's 2/3 of a stop faster, higher ISO than 400, but it's a lot grainier than a 400 speed film, at least in my opinion. I mean, I don't shoot with the most grainy films all the time, though I do develop in Rodinal, which brings out what's there. It's not going to be to a lot of people's tastes. Honestly, that's all I really have to say against the film. The cost is good, the contrast is good, the dynamic range within that contrast is good, the sharpness is good. The grain would be a bit much for some people, not me. There's not really a lot to say else otherwise. So let's start the deep dive into my 3 favorite pictures from this roll. This is my 3rd favorite here. I like it because it's quite high contrast despite the overcast conditions, which is a good strength of the film. You know, it's quite hard to extract contrast on such a flatly lit day. But also just the scene itself, I quite like. You have these lines here, the bit of mangled fence here on the right comes into the foreground from the top right. This gorse bush and hedge goes in from the top right down to the mid left. The fence itself curves along the path, and then the actual pole. And this pole seems to bisect the fence, which I feel is a sort of really poor metaphor for what actually happened here. There is a sharp left turn, downhill, mind you, just behind me to my left. And in 2.5 weeks, there were 2 crashes into the same section of fence. No one was hurt, thankfully. Cars get ruined. That's just a fact of life. That's not important compared to the fact that people are okay. You know, I wouldn't have photographed this if anyone was hurt. I would have felt awful about it. But I do like this shot because it just, you know, I know one of the people who was involved in what happened here quite well. And it's just a reminder that, you know, life is precious and we need to take care of ourselves. And that's something that just kind of resonated given what's happened in the last 1.5 years. Nearly 2 years now, my God. This is my 2nd favorite picture from the roll, and I absolutely love it. I took, 6 or 7 pictures of Trixie on this roll. This one, she was hiding under the bush, looking at leaves that she could stalk. She likes attacking leaves when they blow around in the wind. It's harmless and she's adorable. But this picture, I slowly crawled up to her. Here's one picture I took from further away at like 55mm. And then back here, I crawled all the way up, and I think this was at like 28mm. And I like it because I'm down at her level. She's surrounded by darkness above and light grass below, which matches the markings in her own fur. Dark above and light below, apart from her cute little nose and chin. Sorry. And just being up nice and close, you get that sense of intimacy from the relatively wide angle in this shot, and I like it a lot. Obviously, being a black and white cat, a black and white film is a nice way to capture her. And I think this shot just balances out nicely, especially with the white tuft in her ear, now that I look at it. Lastly, my favorite shot from the roll. I absolutely adore this picture. This was taken at 1/8,000th of a second at f2.8 with the 1V and the 300mm, obviously. Wide open at f2.8 in midday. The background is gone. Motion is perfectly frozen. I mean, look at this spray in the water here. It's absolutely beautiful. And just capturing that moment before the huge stretch of the wings, just stretching, yawning, flexing, however swans do. I don't know, swans are magical creatures. I just like that there's pretty much nothing in the shot except the swan and obviously the water in the bottom, but you have this huge, really obvious kind of burst of spray on the right-hand side that balances it out somewhat. I really like this composition. I'm glad that I absolutely nailed focus. I was really worried about this. I was slightly late getting back from lunch to take this picture. But yeah, it worked out really well. And you know what? Labs, you said that I can't take pictures of things that aren't moving. You, I can. It may not be a cheetah, but it's more than just animal portraiture. If you develop your own black and white film, or you have a lab that does affordable black and white film development, yeah, grab it. I mean, it's basically the same as HP5 at 800 in many regards, and it's similar to something like Kodak's T-Max, just with a bit more highlight contrast. I will say this film is more like T-Max than HP5, so if you're one of the many people out there who are moving away from Kodak films due to their recent behavior, shall we say, then this is potentially a good option to get a T-Max style look with less post-processing than would be required if trying to get the same look out of HP5. This is particularly useful if your lab doesn't offer push processing, where you can get that kind of look out of pushed HP5, but if they don't push, you get that kind of high contrast, medium high grain look out of this film natively. Yeah, I'd say go for it. I mean, for the price, you're getting 2 rolls of film and a handy little case. What's not to like? If you don't develop your own black and white film, and your lab does not offer cheap black and white processing, I'd probably say just keep going for Ilford XP2. I'm not going to repeat myself. It's a really nice film. I like it. I'm looking forward to shooting Reinhold or giving it away. I don't know yet. So thank you for sticking around to the end of this video where we talked about my first roll of Rollei Paul from the Rollei Paul and Reinhold set. If you enjoyed this video and like what I do on this channel, please consider subscribing or checking out my Patreon where the tiers start at just €1 per month. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at Shaka1277 for new pictures every single day. As always, we're going to wrap this video up with a gallery of the rest of the pictures from this roll. Stay safe, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye bye for now.